Hey guys, welcome to a very special day. I'm here with Peter Diamandis and we are having hopefully a really exciting conversation about this new book that he's just released and a lot about his life and his thoughts on the world. Do you want to do a brief introduction to who you are? I know there's a lot in that, like you could probably talk for an hour on that, but do you want to do like a couple of minutes?
I could do, sure. So I feel like a 9-year-old kid on an incredible journey. And my journey's had a bunch of different things. I've spent a lot of time focused on space travel, right? I've built a number of companies, a company called Zero G that creates weightless parabolic flight. We've sent Stephen Hawking into Zero G, and 10,000 plus people can go and for $5,000 go and be weightless inside a parabolic airplane. Another company sent people to the space station called Space Adventures. 8 clients have gone up there. And Space University. One got an MD and a molecular genetics degree and an aerospace engineering degree, and I've started 2 universities, International Space University and Singularity University, and have been focusing on exponential technologies, computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, AR, VR, blockchain, and these technologies are the technologies that are enabling us to change the world. And then my latest sort of focus has been on longevity. How do we add 10, 20, 30 healthy years on your life? And then as you're living those additional healthy years, how does science even extend your life longer? So I'm passionate about technology, passionate about social change, and we're here at X Prize Foundation, which is a place that we focus on solving the world's biggest problems. And so we run global competitions and we say, I don't care where you went to school, what you've ever done, if you demonstrate a solution to this problem, you win $2 million, $10 million, $100 million, whatever the prize is, and society wins the benefit. So running a couple of $100 million of X Prizes. And then Singularity University, I guess I should add that, and Abundance 360 is where I coach CEOs and entrepreneurs on the technologies. So yeah, I have 2 8-year-old boys. That's a hoot.
Hearing your views on the world and experiences leaves me feeling really hopeful, and I think I share your optimism for life and the world. Yeah. What I've noticed in society, especially the younger generation, there's a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety about the state of the world, and media really, pumping this message that the whole world's collapsing, and there's elements of that that's true, but can you talk a bit about the hope you have for the world right now?
So I think that there's never been a more incredible time to be alive. And people who sort of are jonesing for the old days forget that life used to be short and brutish and it was about survival. For most of human history, we just basically survived. Like, where do I get food tomorrow? Where can I get shelter? Can I get water? My kid is sick. I have no idea what to do. And it was brutal. And it's just now, really, the last 50 years, 40 years, 30 years that we can start to, watch content like this and learn and aspire. And it's like we're living in a time where if you really want to solve a problem, you can. We're more empowered than ever before. And the challenge becomes that there are 2 major challenges that are screwing with people's minds. The first challenge is that as we were evolving in the savannas of Africa, our brain developed an early warning sensor called the amygdala. It's on both sides of our brain and our temporal lobes, and it scans everything you see and everything you hear for negative news. And if you see negative news, it puts you on red alert because it would save your life back 100,000 years ago. Today, it just gets you pissed off and bothered. And the news media uses this fact that we pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news to deliver your eyeballs to their advertisers. And that's their business. And they're in the advertising business. That's how, that's how newspapers and radios and TVs make their money. And so if you're paying more attention to negative news, they'll feed you negative news. Good news networks fail. And so we're manipulated in this regard. I'm not saying the negative news isn't true. It's that there's no balanced view of the extraordinary stuff going on in the rest of the world. I mean, it's amazing. And so that's the first manipulation. And so I have basically stopped watching the news. right? I'll watch some small amount of news, or I'll get it filtered by my Google filters. I've actually created an AI machine learning program that searches the world's information and filters it for me on positive incentive, convergent exponential technologies on industries I care about. And we'll be releasing that sometime next year. But at the end of the day, that's the first thing. The second thing going on that's playing people's minds is that, and it's the title of this book, that the world is moving so fast that people don't understand. And people are fearful of what they don't understand. And so people will become fearful of the future because they have no idea, am I going to be relevant? Is my job still going to be there? Will I be at the top or the bottom? Whatever. And so there's fear. And so this negative news and this fear of change and the unknown is really playing with us because our brains were never evolved to live at this rate of speed. And so ultimately, my personal mission is, how do I help entrepreneurs create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future for themselves and for humanity? Right? I think people need to have a hopeful future because they need to have hope. I mean, we're a hope-driven species. It has to be compelling that they love what they could do and where they could be. And then an abundant future is one where the tide is rising for everybody. I define scarcity as, if I have a pie and you want some slices, that means I get less. In an abundant future, it's like, screw that, we're going to bake more pies. Have as many as you want. And so I think that that's really a lot of where we're going.
How do you think we shift from like a fear-based media machine to something more hopeful? Is there an answer to it?
Well, I'm working hard on that, and a lot of it has to do with educating people. I think part of what's going to eventually help there is going to be, we're all going to have a version of Jarvis from Iron Man. Right now, you don't detect your own bullshit because you're in an echo chamber. But there will be the ability to say, hey, listen, when I'm saying something wrong or hearing something that is misinformation, I want to be corrected.
So there's going to be systems in place that can that can fact check for you and all that kind of stuff.
Fact check, and also and bring sources from multiple different angles. If you want to live in your own delusion, you can.
Because I was even thinking recently of starting some other social media handles, and starting a shadow existence where I'm just following the opposite opinions, all the different political parties, just to try and get a balance of trying to understand. And I think we live in a world which is so polarized that I sometimes feel like I wouldn't even know what to say to somebody with that view.
Well, if you just follow me at Peter Diamandis, you'll get all the views you need.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Could you share a bit? Obviously, in the book, you talk about every aspect of society and what's happening now with current technology and the future of technology and how it's all going to build things. In as briefly as possible, could you paint a picture of what you see as this utopian, perfect kind of future of humanity?
So I want to steer away from the word utopian.
Okay.
All right. I'm.
Is there a better word?
Well, I tend to view a lot of these as techno-realist versus techno-utopia.
Okay.
Listen, over the next, it's hard for me to think about anything past 30 years because the rate of change is accelerating so fast that, we can make some reasonable predictions this decade. Maybe the next 20 years. Past that is really difficult to predict. But if we look back 100 years, it's fascinating. So, I would say between 1900 and 2020, I don't think people would argue that the world hasn't gotten better on so many different levels. Not every level, right? We still have species die-off, environmental issues and such that are serious. But on most all levels, we've taken, 85% of the world out of extreme poverty. In the last decade, we've halved extreme poverty on the planet. In the last 10 years, we've reduced childhood mortality by 22%, right? 22% less children under the age of 5 dying in the last 10 years alone. We've added 1 billion people on the electrical grid across the world. I mean, these are fundamental things in the last 10 years alone. And the last 100 years have gotten, hugely better, but we still had 150 people die from the Spanish flu, the Vietnam War, World War I, World War II, all of these things. And we're still going to have pandemics, we'll still have issues, we'll have terrorism, we'll have dictators, we'll have warfare. It's not that the world's going to be la la la, beautiful.
So you don't think it'll be like this Star Trek existence?
I do think that we trend towards Star Trek more than people would imagine. But I'm talking in the next 30 years.
Okay, yeah.
All right. But I do believe that in the next 30 years, we're about to uplift every man, woman, and child on the planet. I do believe that the poorest people on the planet will have access to the best education, not decent education, okay education, that the education of a son or daughter of a billionaire and the son or daughter of someone in a Brazilian favela could be identical, right? And my proof for that is basically what we have on Google right now, right? It's Google, or in China, Baidu, isn't a little bit better for Larry Page or Sergey Brin or Eric Schmidt. It's identical, right? It's the same. It's completely demonetized and democratized access to knowledge and information. And the same thing's going to happen with AI-driven education and AI-driven health. So the best diagnostician, like not feeling well, whatever, it isn't going to be a doctor. It's going to be an AI. No human. I went to medical school, a few decades ago. They never come to me for anything. But at the end of the day, I know that there's no way for a human doctor to keep up with the amount of journal articles written this morning, or the amount of data collected from me in a typical health nucleus scan, which is 150 gigabits of data. It just can't be done. But an AI can, for the cost of electricity, which is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and eventually, globally will be, an order of magnitude cheaper than it is today.
So you think in the next 30 years, even the poorest people on the planet will have access to wearable tech that
100%.
checks their health?
So I'll give you an example. The next 5 years, 2020 through 2025, we are deploying 5G globally, right? And 5G on your phone is 100 times faster than your 4G phone. So that means we're going from 10 megabits to a gigabit, 100 megabits to a couple of gigabits, thereabouts. In addition, we've got Google Loon, tens of thousands of balloons in the stratosphere. We've got Starlink going up from SpaceX, which is tens of thousands of satellites. Kuiper from Jeff Bezos. OneWeb from Greg Weiler.
Are Facebook still doing the planes?
Well, no, they've canceled that program, but Apple's announced their own program, and Facebook will do something. Apple's announced a satellite constellation, and Facebook has talked about a satellite constellation. So we're about to populate the globe with layers of satellites, giving us connectivity at the top of the Himalayas or the Gobi Desert. And because of all that competition, the price will get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And then everybody on the planet's going to have one of these things for free, right? Jeff Bezos will give you one of these. Why?
So you can order stuff
on Amazon, right? I've seen $20 designs for these things. At that point, it's just, please take one. It's wired on, Amazon's your homepage. And Google will do the same, and Apple will do the same. Well, actually, Apple won't do the same.
Can you tell me, and there were some stats in the book about how many connected devices we're going to have as a planet in the next year, 10 years?
So today we've got more cell phones than humans on the planet, which is pretty amazing. Today we've got, let me recount the numbers, we have 20 billion connected devices right now. So what's a connected device? My Oura Ring, which measures my sleep, has got a bunch of sensors in there.
And is this Bluetooth or is this Wi-Fi or what?
This is a Bluetooth connection to my phone.
Okay.
It's got 4 or 5 sensors here, thermal and temperature and
This is collecting
infrared.
health data on you, right?
It's blood waveform, movement, accelerometers, sleep, and so forth. My Apple Watch has got dozens of sensors. I've got a little implantable right here. You can feel it.
What is that?
Yeah, it's an RFID. It's got my business card on it. But eventually, it'll be implanted measuring blood glucose levels, whatever the case might be. And it's we're going to have implantables on us. So the numbers today, 20 billion connected devices. I'm looking here and I see, 50 connected devices within 10 meters here.
Yeah.
And then a trillion sensors today. A trillion sensors. What's a sensor? All these things are sensors, drones, satellites,
Our phones have multiple sensors, right?
A dozen, 12 to 20 sensors in your phone, right? GPS, cameras are sensors. And then by the end of the decade, 2030, we'll have 100 trillion sensors. A single autonomous car driving down the street has got massive amounts of sensors on it. And those sensors are generating gigabits of data per second.
Okay, so here's a question. With all of these devices, whether it's Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, or the 5G network, is there any worry you have about the amount of health-wise that our body... Radio frequency. Because some of my friends are like freaking out. They want to like live in like, it's like the whole tinfoil hat. Like they want to live in the chamber, and some of my friends have like gone off into wilderness because they don't want to be around all the signals. But I'm like, it's inevitable, but is it dangerous? Are we going to kill ourselves with cancer?
So the honest answer is I don't know. But
it doesn't worry you.
But it doesn't worry me in the following way. Sensors have been around. I mean, the earlier cell phones had far more radio frequency energy, unguarded, than we do today. There were scares, I remember, in the 80s that tanked Motorola stock about this, and none of them panned out to be true. So we need to look at what the data is. And when smoking was unveiled to be a cancer threat, the data was there. I mean, it wasn't a little bit, it was massive, right? And we haven't seen that data at all from cell phone devices. Could the newest generation cause it? Maybe. The good news is our ability to fight cancers are getting better and better. Do you know that our bodies are always constantly producing cancers? And your immune system finds them and knocks them out. So cancer is a normal process of when a cell replicates, up to a certain number of times, like 50 times, it's supposed to die. Or some of them become senescent, where they sit there and they just generate inflammatory, and some of them become cancers. And then when they do, your immune system, your T cells find them and knock them out. And so we're beginning to sort of augment our immunity to deal with that. Are there issues? Sure. I think that the value provided outweighs the risk right now.
In your book, you talked about at one point 3D printing is a disruptor in the manufacturing industry, and it was like a big number, like it was something like a $10 trillion.
$10 trillion is the total manufacturing industry. Yeah.
So with like new technologies that are disruptors, a lot of conspiracy theorists, and some of them I buy into, are saying that these bigger, powerful organizations often try and limit or hide or buy the patents on like some of these technologies and restrict them coming out, or want to at least slow them down because they're going to disrupt, right? Do you buy into that?
I'm sure it occurs in a minority of cases, but I don't buy into it.
So like people told me like, oh, cold fusion already exists, and like cars that run on water, but like the petroleum, like all these oil industries are like hiding them away, and like you don't. Do you think disruptors are going to disrupt and there's nothing that's going to stop them?
Yeah, it's like these things are going to be invented multiple locations around the planet. Patents are being published. The information's getting out. If someone were buying it and burying it and it worked, the social outcry for, to energy companies would be ridiculous. So I don't buy it at all.
But do you feel like there is a threat of the systems we have in place slowing down technological advancement
100%.
In the way of like the renewable and stuff like that, like renewable energy? And
so the what's slowing things down is the whole industrial political process, right? Which is the large multi-billion-dollar industries that fund the election of our officials, who then say we need to keep the coal plants operating, which is insane.
Yeah, someone was telling me the coal plants, like they have like contracts with the energy supplies for like 15, 20-year contracts, and you're like, but we need to switch to renewable before that, so what's going to happen?
And so what will happen is Same thing always happens, which is better technology comes out that is so much cheaper than operating the old stuff that it's economically not viable for the players to keep, they make tons more profit on the renewables than they do the old stuff. And it's, I don't depend on the government to do this. I don't depend on policy to do this. I depend on actually the capitalistic engine to do this, meaning when solar, and it's gotten there in a lot of places and getting there very rapidly, is so much cheaper and easier, cheaper to install, cheaper to operate, cheaper to produce electricity, people will just stop everything else, right? We used to go and kill whales on the ocean to get whale oil to light our nights, right? That was energy, right? And then we started ravaging mountains for coal. Then we learned to drill kilometers under the ocean floor. But we're living in a planet that is bathed in 6,000 times more energy from the sun than we consume as a species in a year. So the energy's there. There's massive amounts of energy. It's not in a usable form yet, right? And what technology does is it takes something and it makes it usable. So solar photovoltaic technology is making the energy from the sun usable more efficiently, more efficiently, more efficiently. Like the oil reserves under the ocean were there, just not usable until we discovered new technology to drill down and drill over. And one of the things that's amazing about solar, again, besides the fact that there's 6,000 times more energy, not like 10 times or 20 times, 6,000 times, is that the poorest countries in the world are the sunniest countries in the world, right? So imagine when Colombia and Mexico and Central America and parts of Africa become net energy exporters to the rest of the world. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And if you have abundant energy, guess what else you got? Abundant clean water, right? In fact, there was an article I just reported on last week in which a company has set up a photovoltaic, solar-based, from using Tesla's batteries and solar cells to desalinate water for 35,000 Kenyans, right? So when there's abundant energy, we have massive amounts of water on the planet. We're a water planet. Water's, 2/3 of our planet's water. Problem is 97.5% is salt, 2% are the ice caps, and we fight over 0.5% in our rivers and our lakes. But if you can desalinate water or pull water out of the atmosphere, which we call rain on occasion, there's massive amounts of water. And here's a third domino that falls. If you have clean drinking water for everybody, it eliminates half of the disease burden on planet Earth. Half the disease burden is from people drinking unclean drinking water. It's massive.
You mentioned like capitalism is what's going to drive the energy change. What do you see moving forward as like models that society, do you think capitalism is going to stay as it is? Because in my head, there's an inevitable class system that happens with capitalism where there's like people at the bottom that are in some way suffering. And going on from that, like, do you see politics being changed a lot in the way as AI comes in and computer systems understand how we operate better than we know ourselves?
Yeah, so those are a few different questions. The first is I'll say I hope politics change because it's pathetic and ridiculous what we have right now. And it was built for 200 years ago. It's not valid anymore. A representative government and the stuff that's being dealt with, at least we can speak for our government in DC, I have no confidence that the elected officials know what the hell they're talking about. So put that aside for a second. Let's talk about the wealth gap, which you're alluding to in this, right? So people are concerned that as we see exponential technologies, we're seeing this widening wealth gap. And we are. And I want to convince you that that's not what we should be concerned about, and that's not the story, and there's something amazing happening. Let me pitch it to you, and you tell me what you think.
Yeah.
So if I take you back couple 100 years, 1,000 years. The human species is 100,000 years old. For most all of human history, for 99.95% of human history, one could describe a situation as the king and the queen on the hilltop, or the pharaoh and the slaves, and the people working the fields, right? So it's like the have like the have, the king and the queen, and 99.999% the have-nots. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. The work I do in my abundance community at Singularity at X Prize is to go from the have and have-nots to the haves and the super haves. So what we're doing is the wealth gap is growing, but the bottom is coming up to a level of humanitarian existence, right? Where my goal is that can we create a world in which every man, woman, and child on the planet has access to all the energy they need, all the clean water they need, all the food they need, all the education they need, all the health care they need, right? Entertainment is already there. And in that world of haves, and yeah, there are a few people living on Mars or having $1 trillion asteroid, who cares? If we can create a world in which there's this level of possibility, and it's not about creating a world of luxury for everybody, it's about creating a world of possibility for everybody. You with me there?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine where every mother knows that her kids has access to what they need to follow their dreams instead of barely surviving. We're taking you and I and most people watching have taken a vacation from survival. Right? We've been surviving for all of our existence. It's just now, the last few decades, that we can kick back, have a home brew, watch something interesting. That's not normal. That's not been normal. And now can we uplift humanity so that everybody has access to those things? And for me, capitalism is driving that. Google, God bless them for all the challenges, the negative things, all that, have done more to make the world a better place in terms of democratizing access to information. Android, which populates 99% of the phones out there on the planet. All of these things would not have happened not for a capitalist engine. Now, I run a nonprofit. The X Prize Foundation is focused on being a nonprofit to solve the world's biggest problems, and there's places for both of those things. But I would posit that what Elon has done with Tesla, not even in the cars, but in the energy realm, in batteries and solar, and what he's done in SpaceX, would never have happened in the government realm or nonprofit realm. It really required a capitalist engine to get there, and it's changed the world. He's won. At the end of the day, Tesla has challenged every major car company, right? There's over $300 billion being invested by VW and GM and Fiat and every car company to electrify their fleets, because Tesla has shown what is possible, and so everyone needs to follow. The gas guzzler is dead. It's not going to exist. It's going to exist in resales, but new cars coming to markets, they're all going to be renewable because they're cheaper to operate, they're more efficient, they're better for the environment, and that's going to fix the environment. It's not going to be policy, it's not going to be government. It's going to be that in our own interests, we want an electric car because it's better, cheaper, faster, and we want solar because it's faster, cheaper, better, and available every place. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, so you're saying...
Do you buy that?
I think so. So for instance, like, one topic that I care a lot about, my girlfriend cares a lot about, is like plastic and like how can we solve the plastic problem? Yep. And it's currently cheaper to buy things that are wrapped in plastic and plastic bottles, and you really have to go out your way to, like, I've got like a silicone pop-up water bottle and all those things. I'm trying to do my best to, like, not,
It's called glass.
Yeah. But are you saying that's the thing that's going to drive looking for alternatives to plastic or whatever is going to be still the capitalist?
That's a great question, right? So I believe that and this is fundamental to my core thesis, that there is an innovation or a breakthrough that will be cheaper and better for the environment, and once we get that, everyone will switch.
So a big part of it isn't just the financial gain, but there is something in people's core that they want to make the right choices.
I think
as well.
So. When given an equal level, at least, or even within a 10-20% price margin, people will want to. I believe that human nature is ultimately good. I truly do. And I think people are going to want to have something that's healthier for them, healthier for their family, and for the planet. but you have to give that to them. And I think that traditional companies that are operating on a bottom line are not going to make that wholesale switch. It's going to be done an entrepreneur that's going to make that change.
So it's not necessarily like government policies changing or people doing their best to try and not buy the plastic bottle.
Government policy can change things. We can, in Santa Monica, get rid of plastic bags and it's only paper bags and so forth. And those can make some changes. I just believe that the real way to change things is change the economics. And so what we have talked about here at X Prize is what is the X Prize to change that whole plastics ecosystem.
Are there any big innovators in the plastic space that you're excited about?
Yeah, so what's happening? I think that what is fascinating and happening is that we're going to start to use AI to understand how do we manufacture new materials that are environmentally biodegradable and cheaper to manufacture. Right now, it's experimentation, it's trial and error, but we're going to be able, there's a whole concept called the materials genome where AI can predict this. We know this material does this material does this. We think this material in the middle will have these properties. It doesn't exist yet, but if we build it, it'll have these properties. So how do we experiment in that regard and use technology to generate that? Or how do we start to genetically engineer bacteria, algae, plants that are producing molecules that will give us biodegradable containers that are healthier for the environment, where we start to use life to manufacture what we need that either we haven't discovered yet in the Amazon or it doesn't exist right now, but we're going to create it.
Awesome.
It's tools in a toolkit.
Yeah. So a lot of my audience, like the content I've been making for years on YouTube is more travel based.
Yeah.
And a big concern over the last year, maybe a bit longer, is like the carbon footprint of traveling and flying and doing all these international trips. I've actually slowed down my travels anyway, but like when I think about the solutions for like international travel not being at the moment like planes running on aviation fuel, like what are the people what are the options? What do you think in the nearest future, not like in 30 years, but in the next couple of years, what's the options?
So right now it is an issue. The carbon footprint from jets is huge. And when people talk about biofuels, it's bull. The biofuels represent like a fraction of 1% of use in the out there. So it is possible to build electric jets. We have to get the energy density of batteries up about 3 or 4 times beyond what's in your Tesla, or in my Tesla, but you can get there. And there's the potential for electric jets to operate. What's the time frame for that? And it's not the airplane, it's the engine manufacturers, General Electric and Rolls-Royce and so forth. I've had conversations with Elon about this, and he's had designs on the drawing board for electric jets, even electric supersonic jets. Pretty amazing.
These will be smaller, or these will be big commercial planes? Or
I don't. So there are electric airplanes right now for regional that are being manufactured, and these are typically going a couple hundred miles, LA to San Francisco, LA to Las Vegas, and so forth, and that's great. But what about hopping the pond, right? And there's no reason, it's all a matter of energy density, how much energy you can store. Right now, hydrocarbons, petroleum, Jet A are all high energy chemical bonds, and you burn them slowly, and it's about energy density, how much energy you can put safely into a containment, and right now jet fuel is that. Can you replace that with batteries that have the energy density? And the answer is yes. The question is when. So that's one thing. The other thing is going to be, can we have a zero carbon footprint, which is how far are we away from having full immersive VR, which is, not 100%, in some ways 90%, in some ways 200% the experience of being there. So today, I've got a bunch of VR headsets from HTC, from Oculus.
I got the Oculus Quest recently, and it's awesome.
Awesome, right?
Yeah.
That's about 1K resolution per eye. Your brain is operating at about 12K in the visual cortex. We need to increase the resolution, 12-fold. But we're going to see in the next year double what exists right now. And there's going to be a point very soon where the resolution of your VR headsets is matched to the resolution that your eyeball and your visual cortex can see things. So you put it on, it looks natural, you take it off, it looks the same, you can't tell the difference. In that world, I want you to imagine going and visiting, any country you want. And you can go and visit there with somebody and with crowds. This is, my friend Philip Rosedale created something called Second Life, if you've heard of Second Life. Yeah. And so it is you have an avatar and you're in a virtual world, and as avatars you're interacting with each other, but it's game stick figure-like stuff. But we're going to get to a point this decade where you immerse yourself there and you feel like you are there. And you're there with your girlfriend or boyfriend, and you're there with other people. Some of the people let's say we want to go to, pick a place.
I don't know, Kenya?
All right, let's go to Kenya. And we're in Kenya, and you're walking around a village, and some people, you could be in Kenya looking like a Kenyan, right? Change your hair, your skin color, whatever, because your avatar you can make look whatever you want to be. And you see other people there. Some people are real, some other people are like you in their VR headset. Maybe they're from Chicago or Tokyo. Some people are avatars, some people are AIs, right? They're like in a video game, they look like a person. Their interactions, what they do and what they're saying is being driven by an AI program that's very lifelike. You can go and have a conversation and not know if they're real or not real. And then you can go on safari and you can see all of the animals that are there, and those are AI-driven animals that behave identical to the real animals. But you can also turn a knob and go back in time. What was Kenya like 1,000 years ago, right? And let's go back to prehistoric times, and let's see what Kenya would look like with dinosaurs roaming and you're walking around here. So all of a sudden, your ability to experience something sensory, visual, auditory, I'm not going to put on physical, but your ability to experience that is extraordinary. Maybe not 100%, you don't feel the wind or the aroma, though you could create that if you wanted, but the added bonus of being able to go back in time or whatever is amazing. So we're going to travel in the virtual world, and that's coming fast this decade. Something
I love about traveling in reality is it broadening my perspective on the world and making me. There's a phrase that someone said. This Trevor Noah said, "Travel is the antidote to ignorance." And do you think? And I guess it could happen, but that traveling in virtual reality, going to these places with AIs that are programmed in those local cultures, you could have the same. It could also broaden you in the same way. 100%, because the AI is being created out of the local cultures are fully representative of the conversations you would have, the knowledge they would have, the interactions you would have. And I think you would feel far less of a barrier going and speaking to an AI. Like walking up to somebody and say, listen, I know nothing about your life. Tell me what it was like growing up here as a kid. Would you bring me into your home? Could I see you wouldn't normally go and say that to anybody else, right? But you might say that to an AI Kenyan who is sitting there with you, if you're traveling to Kenya in this case, and have a level of authentic, intimate conversation that most people would feel too shy or awkward to have. But that AI is trained by thousands of previous conversations. Yeah, that's awesome.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah. I actually read your book yesterday. I did it all in a day. Double speed audio book with noise cancelling Bluetooth headphones. So I'm just thinking about all the technology. I was like, the age we live in terms of consuming information, and I was like, this is cool. I'm blocking out the sound from outside. I'm just zoning in. I was just laying down on my roof, and I was just like, listening to your voice, double speed. I even tried to speed it to 2.5. I was like, that's a little bit much. So at double speed, I was like consuming all the information. It gave me enough time to consume it, think. What are your thoughts on consuming information in the future? Do you think it's going to literally be like when Neo in the Matrix like plugs in the thing and he's like, I know Kung Fu? Is it going to be like that? Do you think we'll be able to I'll be able to walk into an interview and be like, oh, what's this book? Oh yeah, let me just read it quickly and press the button?
And the answer is yes. So let's double click on that. There's probably north of $1 billion a year being invested today in companies that are focused on brain-computer interface. What does that mean? Our brains are 100 billion neurons and 100 trillion synaptic connections between those neurons. And everything about you, your personality, all your memories, all of your skills are locked into those 100 trillion synaptic connections. And our brains really haven't changed in 2 million years, though the prefrontal cortex came into existence. And if we wanted to become smarter and we wanted more neocortex, more brain, we can't, because the human birth canal is like limited in size. You'd kill your mother if you tried to double the size of your brain coming out. In fact, the brain is disproportionately large to the body in a child already. But what could you do? So my phone, when it is processing information on here, the computation in here is amazing, right? Orders of magnitude more than what took us to the moon. But when it wants to do something really complex, like transcribe my voice or analyze images and photos, it doesn't happen on the phone. The data gets collected by the phone, then the data gets transmitted to the edge of the cloud. The processing happens there, the answer comes back to my phone a few milliseconds later and I see it, right? So it's using the edge of the cloud to do the processing. So the concept is we're about to connect our brains to the cloud. And it's called brain-computer interface, one of the terms. And so I'm speaking in front of audiences of thousands of people every week, and I ask how many folks don't have their phone with them, right? And it's very rare. Like it's one out of 3,000 people that don't have their phone with them. This is a brain extender, right? We're addicted to it because it adds so much value to our lives. It's also obviously neurochemically addicting, which is not good, but we'll put that aside for the moment. But what happens if you could connect your brain to the cloud and know anything you want, anytime you want? You think about like what is the GDP of Ghana, right? 20 years ago, I would ask you and say, let's race, let's go find out. And we'd hop in our cars, try to figure out where the local library is, go and hope they had a recent book on the GDP of Ghana, and then you'd get the answer. Now, I say, what is the GDP of Ghana?
I don't know who you are.
Let me try that again. It picked me up too early. What is the GDP of Ghana?
As of 2017, the GDP of Ghana is $47.3 billion.
Okay. So it's, 20, 30 seconds. In the future, you'll just ask the question and know it instantly, right? And
without vocalizing
without your brain, you'll think and you'll know. Right?
So the storage we're accessing will be a link from our brains.
Yeah,
to
in our brain, right now the question, everything we want to act and feel and say and do is happens in our brain, and then our brain brings it to our vocal cords and we speak it. But it's all there already, right? You can bypass all this vocal cord stuff. And it's beyond that, we're going to see the ability to increase our intelligence and such. So there's a company that Elon Musk funded called Neuralink that announced last year that they're in primates right now and they'll be in humans within the next 12 months. And
I also know Brian Johnson.
Yeah, Brian, who does Kernel, same thing. And Brian and Elon in the early days working together. And so the ability to put chips in the brain, and those chips being able to interface with our neurons and being able to allow people to feel at a distance, move things at a distance, make inquiries, get knowledge in a two-directional. Neuralink, their technology they're going to be using first for people with a cervical fracture who've got locked in, they can't move their arms or the legs, and they're like stuck. But you can bypass the peripheral nervous system and just think to move your wheelchair or a robot around and feel through their sensors. And there's a dozen companies in that area. And probably every military. I mean, if you could increase the intelligence of your country's citizens or your employees, it's one of the biggest differentiators out there. So scary stuff and exciting stuff.
Something I loved in the book at the end, it was near the end, I think it was the last chapter, was talking about how it was something around the idea that being in the flow state as a team it was the most pleasurable state that we could achieve as humans. And I know that links into this hive mind thing.
But I call them meta intelligence. Yeah,
but going back just to if we were physically in a room now and we were dreaming, I actually recently watched General Magic, the documentary about the origins of the smartphone, and I was just and my girlfriend, we were so hyped. Imagine being in a team of people changing the world like that. The excitement and the pleasure of being of groundbreaking and doing something. With technology and advancement technology, what I've seen is, even in my shorter life, but is a movement away from true community and face-to-face contact, and a lot of it's all online digital networks and friends. People have less friends now. They're more lonely, more disconnected, in my opinion. Do you see some solution to that, and is it technology based? Do you think getting back to face-to-face community, because I live in Venice, and it's we live in a house of 8 of us, and we've purposefully done this where we're I want to live with people, that I'm not isolating myself. But most
so
people
I love that as well. I love that idea of of a commune, basically, right? And that makes me happy, where it's people you respect and people who enrich your lives, and it's human connection, and that is fundamental and important. It's important for health. It's important for longevity. It's important for creativity. It's important for a multitude of things. And technology is also going to give us a different level. And in the end of the book, I talk about something called the meta intelligence. And I want you to imagine the following. In a future in which I'm able to connect my brain to the cloud, and you're able to connect your brain to the cloud, and I can know your thoughts unfiltered, as intimately as they come, and then all of a sudden we have a community of 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 or 10 million or 100 million. I can watch the sunrise through the eyes of a teenage, person in Tokyo. It's a level of connection that is far beyond what's possible today. It's a level of oneness, if you would. And imagine if you disconnect yourself from that, how lonely you would feel. Right? And there's an analogy for that, which is, Lou, you're not a single entity. You're a collection of some 40 trillion human cells, right? There are 40 trillion life forms that form you. Those 40 trillion life forms are cells throughout your body. That doesn't include viruses and fungi and bacteria, which add probably another 40 trillion on there. But you work as a one to be awe-inspired or, perform or do whatever it is. And so I think we're heading towards a world where we're going to be so interconnected that we'll become conscious at a new level. And what will that be? I don't know, but I think that is where we're heading. That's what life has continuously done over and over and over again.
What's something that you've changed your opinion on personally in the last couple of years?
That's a great question. So a couple of things. One, I've become much more sensitive to the environment, right? For sure. There's a level of wake up and be pissed off, awakening. much more sensitive to women in leadership. I think one of the things I'm very proud of is the heads of each of my teams in my own company are women, and the majority of leaders here at XPRIZE are women. I think guys have had plenty of time to have gotten it right. It's time to hand over the reins and let some leaders who've got empathy take the reins. Interestingly enough, I was much more worried about technological unemployment 5 years ago than I am now. So I used to be like, we're heading towards a brick wall, we're going to have big troubles. It hasn't been happening as fast as I expected, and it's less about technology replacing humans and more about technology augmenting humans. So those are some of the areas that I think I'm becoming more sensitive to. And as a father of 8-year-old boys, my life in parenting has changed a lot.
What's one question that you will hope to have answered in your lifetime that you currently don't know?
I mean, is there intelligent life in the universe? Is definitely up there, right? I'm pretty clear there is life in our solar system that isn't from Earth. In other words, subsoil in Mars or in the oceans in Europa, lots of different places that could be. But is there intelligent life out there? The second thing is we're in the midst of an evolution of the human race. We're going from evolution by Darwinism, natural selection, to evolution by human direction. And what are we going to evolve ourselves into? The rate of transformation is accelerating and rapid. We are not going to be the same society or the same human race that we are 50 years from now as we are today. Things are going to change dramatically. And so what is that? Is the nature of this, I believe, hopefully, towards increasing intelligence, which brings increasing empathy and kindness, or are we diverging in some ways?
What's one thing you believe that you think most people don't believe?
So I am absolutely clear that there is nothing scarce. It's just not in a usable form yet, and that we're increasing scarcity, and we're increasing abundance in almost every area. Abundance of knowledge, of energy, of water, of food, of shelter, all of these things, and that will drive a world in which we can uplift every man, woman, and child. And I also believe that there is no problem we cannot solve.
So I guess the final question is, what is one takeaway from anyone watching this video, or it could be more than one, to leave people feeling hopeful?
There's a few takeaways. Number one, we're living in a time where your ability to solve the world's biggest problems is greater than ever before. I mean, every one of us have access to the world's knowledge and information, access to more capital than ever before, more computational power than ever before, access to 3D printing on the cloud. If you truly want to solve a problem, you can. That's the very first thing. I really fundamentally believe that. It's the will and the conviction to do it that is the first step. The ability for an individual to impact the planet is extraordinary. The second thing is that I define an entrepreneur as someone who finds a problem and creates a business by solving it. And I think that there are more entrepreneurs than ever before, and therefore there are more problem solvers than ever before. What I like to say is the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. Want to become a billionaire, help a billion people, right? And that is now possible. An individual can create a product or service, something that can impact positively the lives of a billion people. And so these things give me hope. There's one more thing that gives me hope is we're heading towards a world of radical transparency. What does radical transparency mean? It means that it's harder than ever before to do anything in secret. We have 1 trillion sensors right now in the planet. Will be 100 trillion sensors by 2030. Those sensors are measuring and seeing everything. And if you do something, it's caught someplace. And so we have to change the way we're conscious about that and change the way we behave. So, for example, if there's a drone flying over a herd of elephants, the poachers stay away. they don't want to be caught, right? If there's a policeman with a dashboard camera or a chest camera that does something and they're caught, it changes behavior. So we're losing privacy. And I ask people a lot, do you think you have privacy? And almost everybody I ask says, I want privacy, but I don't believe I have privacy. And the flip side of that is this radical transparency.
I feel like I know I haven't got privacy and I don't really mind.
Right, and that's basically, I think that is the healthy place to be. Yeah.
I just thought of another question actually, and this is more around stuff that we're doing. So, like I said, I've been doing like YouTube for 8 years, mainly around travel, and now more recently, really passionate about making a difference and social impact. And like, how can I reach out to my audience who are watching to help them implement change in their own lives? What's even more exciting for me is over that time, I've networked with a bunch of other social influencers, a lot of whom are in LA, doing all sorts of stuff, whatever it is online, like, social influencers, whatever it's like comedy, beauty vlogs, or for me, it was travel. What we're setting up now is this thing called the Social Good Club. And I'm trying to tap into this vast network of audiences with all my friends and people that are doing stuff. Firstly, helping build community for those influencers and creators who often are like really isolated and disconnected anyway, just because in the same way that I think like the celebrity world kind of suffers a bit because you do just get more isolated. A lot of my friends are disillusioned. They're like, I want to make a difference in the world. I don't know how. I don't know exactly what I care about, but I've got this audience who are listening to every word I say, and I feel like I want to do more. So this is a problem I'm trying to solve. Is there any advice you have for us in building a community which is trying to engage our audiences to do more in the world?
So what I teach is like
and also, could we have some ongoing connection together? Like, I'd love to learn from you more, for you to get involved.
Yeah, I'm totally open to it, either through X Prize or through my abundance community.
Yeah.
I have a couple different communities. I have an Abundance 360 entrepreneurial summits, 360, 400 CEOs. We get together every January and talk about exponential technologies, where they are and where they're going. And I have about 4,000 entrepreneurs digitally who participate. And then the X Prize is a large community as a Singularity University. All of that is ultimately narrowed down to, first and foremost, what is your massively transformative purpose? Why are you on this planet? What is it that you're focused on doing? And without a target, you'll miss it every time. So it's getting clarity in the community about what is the number one purpose. What is it that you're driving to accomplish? And I think that is the thread that pulls the string forward. When you're clear about what you want to do, then the question is, how do you do it? And there's a multitude of ways to do that at scale more than ever before.
I guess the thing exciting for me as well, I didn't mention, is like, I know that I, as a travel influencer or whatever, don't know what's happening. And I learned a lot from your book, like some of these current innovations. But like, I think connecting innovators on the ground that have been doing it for a long time and being able to use like my platform to share the stories and to highlight the stuff that's happening and to excite people about there are solutions happening in these areas, whether it's like solving homelessness in LA or plastic waste or, looking at the animal extinction or whatever it is. Like, I think there's a partnership there with influencers that have an audience and innovators.
Yeah, for sure. I think part of it is also we're creating X Prizes in all these areas. One of the X Prizes for like animal extinction, it's like the rhinos and elephants being hunted down for their tusks. There's technology, I imagine, that would be a great X Prize is, can you grow a tusk in the lab from the stem cells that generate the bone or cartilage, and then
flood the market.
The market.
Yeah.
And then it's like it's indistinguishable from the real thing. And the price comes down to the point where no one's poaching anymore, right? That, for me, is an abundance-minded technological solution.
Yeah.
to the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And so how do we think about those out of the box, I hate out of the box ideas, but how do you think about those sort of non-traditional solutions for that? But I think ultimately it is always around education. It's around, right, the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And so where are you trying crazy ideas? Really important idea, right? And so if you're not trying crazy ideas, then you're trying incremental improvements. And most people just toss away crazy ideas. But everything we're doing today is crazy compared to what it was 10 or 20 years ago. So, I mean, those are my initial thoughts on the stuff. I mean, all the areas that I'm working on, just if you go to Diamandis.com, you can see X Prize, Singularity University, all the different things that I'm focused on. And I put out a blog every Sunday on exponential technologies and abundance. I wrote my first book, Abundance: The Future is Better Than You Think, in 2012, and I was the opening TED's talk on that year. And the story for abundance has gotten so much better in the last 10 years that we're going to release a new version of the book on the 10-year anniversary of 2012, just to show how we're creating massive abundance in all the key areas. And we're just so bombarded by negative news, we don't notice it. Yeah. Not to say that there aren't problems that we have to solve, and people have to be conscious and solve them. We have to do those things. But it's working. We are doing that, and we are making a dent, and we can make a dent. And you have to have that hopeful, compelling vision of the future.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Peter.
You're welcome.
It's been amazing.
You're welcome.
Thanks for watching. That was an amazing interview. If you want to dive in a bit deeper to some of the stuff we were talking about and more, please check out Peter's new book. I'm going to link it in the description, and I'll catch you next time.